Hi. So, my research is going to be on deconstruction in popular entertainment and how Christians can identify and address it. Now, deconstruction is a term that we keep hearing, well, over and over around the church world. And that's because it's happening in such a public space. Now, deconstruction at its most basic is people just working out their faith. And that's really a great thing. When we work through our doubts, we can have a more clear and more beautiful vision of Jesus. But when it happens publicly, that changes that dynamic. It changes the conversation. So when somebody deconstructs publicly, not only are they working out their faith, and the results could be that they go more towards Christ and a deeper, richer, fuller faith, or they go away from Christ and have no faith. But when they do that through social media, or specifically what I want to address, popular entertainment, here's what ends up happening. They're in fact making an argument, either for faith or against faith. Now, I don't think that we need to meet that as Christians with outrage, because that tends to be the way we respond to these things. In fact, if we listen, what we find is a subtle cry for help, misunderstandings of what Christianity, ultimately what Jesus is really about. And so what I want to do is I want to make an apologetic, look through the lens of apologetics or a defense of the Christian faith at deconstruction in a very particular popular entertainment format, i.e. a Netflix show. And so I want to look at Midnight Mass. And ultimately what I'd like to do is take the very specific in Midnight Mass, a Netflix show, and use that as a template for how we can start to open our eyes and see how people are deconstructing and crying out for help through other forms of popular entertainment. And to give you an example, because it all sounds very heady, in Midnight Mass, it's written by a man named Mike Flanagan. Mike Flanagan was an altar boy in the Catholic Church growing up, and he would be what we call a lapsed Catholic. And so this is honestly has to be deconstruction, a working out of his faith, trying to make sense of it. Especially when we look to the different episodes of the show. He starts in Genesis. He ends in Revelation. He's making some statements about the Christian faith. And ultimately what we find is it's his misunderstanding of the Christian faith that leads him to look at religion as horrific. And that's how we start to understand why he chose religious horror as the genre. But also there's very basic arguments that in apologetics we kind of stack up the answers for because we know they're coming. One of those is the problem of evil. So in the show, there's a character by the name of Riley Flynn, and he opens the entire series. Riley Flynn is a character who had left this island called Crockett Island. He's out celebrating with a woman. We don't know if it's his girlfriend or fiance, but he drinks and drives, gets in an accident. He lives and she does not. He ends up going to prison, and every night he sees her image as he lays down. And so as time goes on, you start to understand that Flanagan is arguing, asking, why is it that bad things happen to good people? Ultimately, what Flanagan is posing is the problem of evil when we look at it through an apologetic lens. And as he tries to work out, he starts to lead to some erroneous views. Ultimately, for Riley Flynn, he lands in a couple of spaces. One is a hope of universalism as he has a conversation with another character. But another place that he lands is a theology of works, that if he can sacrifice himself, then ultimately he'll find himself in heaven, or whatever the vision of that is that Mike Flanagan has. And so I use all that to say that that's kind of an image or a snapshot of how popular entertainment makes arguments for or against religion. Ultimately, I'd say that it's kind of neutral depending on our interpretation. And so what I pose is that we have a interpretation model kind of at hand that we can use. It's good for clergy or somebody who's in ministry. It's good for a Sunday school teacher or a youth pastor, anybody that has to answer questions. But I would state that if we could understand popular entertainment in this way, then if you're just the average Christian, you can start to look for more of the transcendent, more of the Jesus in things, even when he doesn't seem to be there. That way, when people start to take that ideology or that resulting worldview, you can speak educatedly into it. You can, use the apologetic arguments that will be provided within the research.